Hey gorgeous, coming to you today, Chris Piccone from Lit Up Women Leaders, and I'm talking today about why having to constantly prove yourself in the workplace despite all of your experience, despite your qualifications, despite the runs that you've put on the board previously, you're constantly having to prove and justify yourself. So I want to talk about this feeling that it raises within us and where that comes from, because it's something that starts to wear women down. And I know this from experience, but I've also had a client in recent times who would feel as though she was constantly having to fight the fight. And it's a really interesting thing that in the corporate space today, the sort of language that we hear is around winning and, taking one for the team and having to choose your battles and, going in to fight the fight for another day. And it's all very masculine. It's all very a warrior-like language. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with warrior-like language in a certain situation. But for women who need to be in their feminine presence, in their feminine leadership, it's really difficult for you to front up day after day. And whether you're working from home or whether you're back at the workplace, it's the same thing. For you emotionally to have to front up every day and to be, confronted by this language and in this environment where the whole culture is around fighting, winning, getting to the top, being on top, staying on top, being number one, being top dog. It's all so constricting for women, and it's what causes us to shrink back within ourselves and not be able to get into that state of creative flow. And where it stems from is really the industrial age, when people were told when to show up, what to do exactly, and only that, and when they could take breaks, when they could have lunch, and what time they could leave. So their freedoms and their restrictions were imposed on them quite strongly. Now, today we've got a lot more liberty as employees. We've worked hard and the unions have reduced our working week for us. And if you're fortunate enough to work for, an IT company or a company that's a bit more progressive, you might have a ping pong table, you might have, some chill out areas, you might have lots of plants in a particular creative space. But still, if you're absorbed by and confronted by all of this language and all of this feeling around having to prove yourself or having to win or having to be on top or fight for approval or fight for what you need, the tools and resources that you need to get the job done, the people that you need on your team, and the capacity that you need to do something, then it's really wearing you down. And so that all stems from the patriarchal culture that is corporate. And so if you're feeling as though you're unsupported, if you're feeling as though you're constantly challenged by those more senior to you, the exec team perhaps, whether you're feeling like, there is a real fight on your hands day after day, week after week, month after month, project after project, then it's a real thing. Just know that it is a real thing. And it's very common for women over time, over a prolonged period of time, of being exposed to this sort of culture, of being exposed to this way of working, to get worn down much easier than men. Men have high levels of testosterone that create the drive. So those energy levels come from the hormonal injection of testosterone that men commonly experience. For women, we don't have those high levels of testosterone. So we need to take rest, we need to relax, we need to recharge. And I was having a conversation with someone this morning online about this, where there are seasons that we need to live by more so than men. And those seasons include rest and recuperation, a creative season, a time to plan, and then a time to implement, the action stage. And they happen for us both seasonally and also monthly, so based on the moon cycles. Hi Jess, lovely that you can join us. So basically, as women, we don't work well in that environment over a prolonged period of time. Now, certainly short, sharp bursts of testosterone and cortisol even are really helpful for us to get started on something that we might be stuck on. But over a long period of time, if your body is constantly experiencing those heightened levels of testosterone and cortisol that are caused by prolonged periods of stress, then you're not going to be in optimum shape. You're not going to be in your most creative state. You're not going to be totally lit up and in flow. So just know that if that's you, if you're sitting at your desk with your head in your hands, struggling, thinking, why can't I get through to people? Why is this such a challenge? Why is this so hard? I know with this particular client that I mentioned earlier, for her it was like pulling a wagon up a hill. I mean, who wants to do that in a big white flowing cotton dress, pulling a wagon up a hill with everything that you own in the wagon? And the horses are tired and thirsty, and you've got screaming babies in the back of the wagon, and you're the leader of your community, your little community. So there are other women in the wagon. One is probably pregnant, about to give birth any day. If that's what it feels like for you, then just know that it's normal for you to feel that as a woman working in a patriarchal system, a patriarchal environment, but also that there are things that you can do about it. So here are some things that you can actually do to help yourself around that. So start to think about across your month, or across your working month, or across your week, when are the peaks and the troughs in your energy levels? When do you feel more inspired naturally? Now, in those 4 seasons that I mentioned, and also the cycles within the moon, there are times when you're going to feel as though you can be more communicative, when you can speak openly and freely, and it's not so much of a challenge for you to get your message across. So if you need to present something, or if you need to put yourself in front of someone who's highly influential in order to get something done, or get approval, or get support or assistance on something, or pull together a team, for instance, if you're pulling together a brand new team, then it's important for you to do that in that phase of your cycle, in that time of the week or that time of the month when you naturally find it easy. So if you start to chart this for yourself, if you start to journal this for yourself over the course of the next couple of months, you'll start to see some patterns appear. You'll start to see 5 to 8 day periods wherein you feel better and more confident about communicating what you need and want. Okay, so that's the first thing that you can do. The next thing you can do is start in your charting, start to recognize those times when you feel like you have all that get up and go. You feel like you have increased levels of testosterone or energy. You feel like you can conquer the world. You feel like you're playing the game with the big boys in a way that really matters. And by the way, it always matters. It's just that sometimes we can feel suppressed by all of this male energy, and it's really difficult for us to scramble to the top of that pile, okay? So start to chart that and recognize those times of the week or the month when you really feel as though your energy level is sky high and you can just keep going, okay? But notice also that just keep going is unhealthy for women to sustain over an entire 4-week period, or over an entire quarter, or over an entire year, okay? Which brings me to the next point. You will see patterns when you start tracking and journaling this in times when you feel as though you are more creative, and for me personally, on a day-to-day basis, for me, it's during the golden hour. So it happens between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. If I can, I get up earlier than that, because the earlier I get up, the more I get out of my golden hour. I seem to work much more productive between, say, 5 and 8 or 6 and 8 a.m. And then once the sun comes up and I start to notice the energy of what's going on around me, and people and activity and noises in the building and out on the street, then my productivity starts to slow down a little bit and the distractions start to come in. So you'll notice this as well in your own levels of creative flow throughout the day or the week or the month. So in your charting, start to look at that as well, and have a look at those times when maybe it's better for you to shut yourself away from the rest of your team, or whoever is in your workspace. Shut yourself away and do that creative stuff. So write out your programs, write out your marketing copy, come up with concepts and ideas about how you're going to really navigate your territory and really increase your sales in your particular territory if you're in sales. So super important for you to start to identify these peaks and troughs in your day, week, and month that will really assist you to be at your optimum, so that you can play the patriarchal game with more ease and grace that you may be experiencing right now. And then, of course, so that covers, so I've done creativity, I've addressed action, rest and recuperation is the last one. So there are times, I know personally, I start to shut down at about 7 o'clock at night. So I actually have a setting on my phone that mutes all notifications from 7 p.m. at night, because I know that if someone calls me at that time of the night, I'm not functioning in a way that is my peak time. It's not, for me, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work for me to be alert from 7 p.m. onwards, because I'm up so early. I'm up from, sometimes 5 a.m., but certainly by 6 a.m. And I'm powering through the first 3 hours of my day. And so those first 3 hours of my day are intense. They involve physical activity as well to a certain degree. And I'm using a lot of energy. So by the time I get to 7 p.m., I don't need the pressure of my phone beeping constantly, which it does if I allow it to, beeping constantly every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, every 4 minutes, with notifications from all the different platforms I'm on, or with notifications from people wanting things from me. So it's not that I don't nurture what it is that people need from me, but there are boundaries, and I've spoken about this in previous videos, and please, if this is something that you really could benefit from, then reach out to me, send me a message in the live, and type in your comments right now as well. I'm happy to hear your comments and questions about this, so please do post comments and questions here. But if this is something that interests you, I'm happy to do some more lives on this or videos on this, so please do reach out. But recognize when you're at your optimum and when you need to rest. So for me, I need to rest from 7 p.m. onwards. I know that I need to take a day and a half off a week. I know that once a month I need a 3-day weekend. Okay, so make sure that when you're charting all of this, you're starting to look for those patterns as to when you are most at your optimum, you are most at your creative. You need more rest and relaxation than perhaps at other times of the day, week, or month, and when you can communicate most freely. So those are the 4 different patterns that you're looking for. And I really urge you to, hello everybody that's online, thank you for joining me. Please type in your questions and comments, love to address them for you. So watch for those patterns, because by living in this patriarchal world, by working in this patriarchal environment, it's becoming increasingly difficult for us as women to find those breaks when we can rest and recharge. And so therefore, that inability to find that space then has a flow-on effect to our levels of creativity, flow and creativity. So that's where it becomes difficult for us to present our voice in a way that is heard. So the mistake we commonly make as women is we try and fall into line with that culture of winning, getting to the top, and I've seen and worked with executives who destroy themselves and destroy their personal brand because of this winning attitude. Women in exec level positions who burn themselves out and destroy their relationships and their level of influence and their professional brand because they fall into line with this achievement-oriented, win at all costs, got to be top got to be top dog, got to be the best, and it causes their feminine presence and feminine version of their leadership self to shrink and to eventually disappear. And that gets into all sorts of issues like identity crises and things, as well as things like burnout, mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. So I am here to share with you in my community how to avoid being that person, how to avoid being that female leader who destroys everything around her in her career and personal life, because this all has a flow-on effect to your personal life. I'm here to share this with you so that you can avoid reaching that state of burnout. I do not want that for women in my community, and I'm here to educate people so that you can really turn things around for yourself and start to look at the nuances in how you relate to people. So if you're not getting approval for things, if you're not being heard, if you don't feel as though you're being taken seriously, then look at this patterning exercise, look at this journaling exercise, and look at how you can optimize those times when you are more communicative, when you do need to rest and recharge, when you can be more gung-ho, and when you need to be more creative. And honoring those 4 seasons or those 4 aspects of, the cycle as to how we live life will really help you to be able to communicate with more influence when you are communicating. I know I used to go into meetings sometimes and blurt things out because I was on a deadline and I needed to get some approval for something, or I needed to communicate something, or I needed to tell people that I needed their support about something. And so I'd go into a meeting and I'd totally blurt something out and hope that people would come on board, hope that people would support my project or my initiative, and then wonder why they wouldn't. And quite often it was because it's that feeling of kind of being unprepared for a conversation or caught unawares. But deeper than that, what we don't necessarily realize is that what's happening in our brain and in our body is that it's not the right time for you to communicate that. And so your brain is pushing against that, because in terms of the time of the day or the time of the week or the time of the month, when you're at optimum performance for communication, that's just not it. So it just doesn't work for you. So that's one of my tips for how you can overcome this patriarchal cycle of winning at all costs, being on top, being the best. Keep going. We've got to fight the fight, win the battles. You don't. You can retract into your own pattern. You can retract into your own season, your own cycle, and you can approach things when it suits you. So I trust that helps. More next time. Thanks for joining me.